broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please.
So welcome everyone to today's Economy, Culture and Skills Committee meeting, and thank you for joining us. Today the committee will focus on a very hot topic, which is the Mayor's upcoming strategic licensing pilot. We will hear from our guests and consider what the impact of the pilot will be, and if any of the new measures are sufficient to improve the experiences of businesses and, of course, residents in London. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to please switch off their mobile phones or to put them onto silent. And I'd also like to ask members and guests to position their electronic devices away from their microphones. If you could please adjust your microphones so that you can be heard clearly, and remember to lift them from the base if required. Members of the public are encouraged to follow at London Assembly on various social media platforms, and if you are on X, if you're still on there, please use the hashtag #AssemblyEconomy for this committee. Now, I've got a few items of business to cover first, which is if I could start off by asking our committee clerk, Sal Fazal, to confirm any apologies for today's meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Assembly Member Desai, and in accordance with Standing Order 2.4, Assembly Member Bukhari will be attending the meeting virtually.
Thank you very much. Move on to declarations of interest. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if any members have any other interests to declare? Anybody gone to a licensed venue recently or wanting to? No. Okay. Move on to item number 3, which is the response to the committee outputs. Can I ask the committee to note the response from the Mayor of London to its letter on credit unions in London? Thank you very much. And we come to our substantial item for today, the first item, proper item of business, which is a discussion on the strategic licensing pilot in London. We've structured our meeting into two panels, and I'd like to welcome our guests who are in front of us today. We've got Alan Thomas, who's a partner at Thomas & Thomas LLP. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be joined in a few minutes by Brian Hook, who is the Director of Arts Theatre at Marble Arch. And we have with us Jim Cathcart, who is Policy Director at UK Hospitality. So thank you so much all for joining us. We'll kick off with a question from myself, and if you could probably just open up with what you see as the current challenges and perhaps some of those opportunities in terms of the licensing pilot for London. Alan, if we could start with yourself.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to appear before you today. I'm sure Jim will cover this in a bit more detail, but hospitality businesses at the moment need everything that they can get to survive. And when they're applying for licenses, particularly in cumulative impact areas, this can be very difficult. It's difficult getting the license in the first place. It's getting the right license that they need. In some areas, it's even difficult or impossible to be able to serve alcohol without food, even up till 9 p.m. in the evening. That's how difficult it is in some parts of London. And what makes it difficult, I'm afraid to say, are cumulative impact policies. Now, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into this, but cumulative impact policies make it much more difficult for operators to get a license. And even if they're successful getting a license, the terms of that license tend to be quite restricted, as I've just mentioned. So it just might be a license where you can serve alcohol with food. You might not be able to have any type of entertainment. And you might be limited to even 11 p.m. In the evening in some areas. And that deters domestic and international investment hugely. I have people coming to me regularly. They say, we want to open even a restaurant within some parts of London, and one has to say, almost don't bother. Go somewhere else where you can get the permission that you need. And that's unfortunate. What it does, ironically, is it creates a type of donut effect where the slightly more intense uses, people who want to have a bar or a music venue, they're pushed out of the areas where they should really be, which ideally would be the West End of London. And they end up going to other parts, and again, ironically, where sometimes there's more residential amenity, which then would get affected. So I can come back to after Jim's fed in his thoughts on that, but it really comes down to cumulative impact policies and how they're dealt with under the Mayor's pilot.
Thank you very much. Alan? Oh, sorry, Jim, sorry.
No problem, thanks, Chair. And yeah, a big thank you to the committee for having UK Hospitality on today. Yeah, just a little bit about us. We represent, we're the industry body representing the wider hospitality sector. So our members will be sort of pubs and nightlife, but also sort of cafes and coffee shops, casual dining, restaurants, and that sort of thing. Obviously, a lot of those businesses will need an alcohol license to be able to operate successfully. And I think Alan makes a really good point there around the cumulative impact areas, because I think one of the challenges facing businesses when it comes to licensing, certainly in parts of London, is where the Licensing Act and regime itself was designed as a sort of permissive. Every business, every licensed premises should be judged on its own sort of merits when it's applying for an application or opening up as a new venue. And I think what we've seen over the last sort of 15 years or so is sort of a layering on top, not in every area of London, but a layering on top of sort of extra levels of inflexibility in essence. So you've got the cumulative impact areas that Alan spoke about there. So that's almost locking down areas so no new licenses can come in. You've got things like sort of core hours policies where there will be a decision made by the licensing authority that certain types of venues should only have certain types of hours associated with them, which also has knock-on effects as well, as we're seeing much more flexibility in how hospitality venues are marketing themselves and experiential and other elements. So those sort of rigid sort of categories of licensed premises that might have been applicable a few years ago are constantly evolving. So I think that's one of the major challenges, is losing that flexibility and ability to go with the flow or move with the times, if you like, that we're seeing in certain areas. I'd make as a broad point, Chair.
No, thank you. And you've both set out the challenges that businesses have at the moment with the current regime and how it operates. Obviously, the pilot will come in this summer. From what you know of how the pilot will operate, do you feel it goes far enough, or there be challenges that need to be resolved as part of how this gets introduced that we could try and feed in?
I think it does go far enough. Obviously, the devil, in terms of the strategic, the areas of strategic importance will come out in the regulations, and they need to be consistent with what we've seen already. My understanding is as follows. There are the first tier of applications where local authorities have to have regard to the strategic licensing policy, and it's important, of course, that they have sufficient regard, because regard is a word that can be viewed by different people in different ways. And then there's a second tier, which are applications which fall within Appendix 3 and those of strategic importance, which, as I understand it, can include premises within the cumulative impact area. And where you have such applications, the mayor needs to give the local authority notice that it's an application of strategic importance. And then if local authorities then don't have regard to the strategic licensing policy, and if they refuse or modify the application, then the GLA has got discretion to call that in. Now, I know it's been said that that discretion will be used sparingly, but we are at a crossroads, economically at least at the moment, and I would urge any changes and any discretion to call in applications to be used prudently, but not necessarily sparingly. It's important that the right message goes out at the outset, particularly in relation to premises in cumulative impact areas and others of strategic importance. And I guess the follow-up issue to that is the difficulty with cumulative impact areas is there is firstly, most local authorities that have one say that there is a presumption to refuse. And I know that the strategic licensing pilot takes that away, but I am concerned that local authorities might have regard to that, and it goes even further back. We need to make sure that local authorities have due regard to the strategic licensing policy, even at the time that they're making their own statement of licensing policies. You've got to get it right from the beginning, because evidentially, what a cumulative impact policy does is it puts the applicant on strict proof to prove that either there won't be any addition to cumulative impact, and if you're opening a restaurant in the West End, let's be honest, how do you say this new restaurant won't add to cumulative impact? It can be quite difficult, and it's even more difficult to prove an exception where an exception is required. And it goes down to evidence. A lot of representations that are made aren't necessarily based on what will happen, they're based on what might happen. So there is this very much of an imbalance in that respect.
Jim?
Thank you, Chair. I think certainly we as UK Hospitality as a sector are very supportive of what's being proposed. As Alan said, obviously, devil in the detail type stuff, but I think anything that puts sort of licensing front and centre in terms of trying to address it, in terms of it being a barrier to growth and new developments and that sort of thing, is really positive. I think it will be really interesting to see how the definition of strategic comes into it, because reading the consultation, that was published a couple of months ago now. I think you're talking about strategic almost in terms of sort of size of new development or size of business done by rateable value. And I think it'd be interesting to see, or I think for other types of strategic areas or businesses when it comes to licensing to be recognised. So by that I mean rather than just big new developments, being falling into scope for this, perhaps existing businesses or areas of London where there's a particular type of or mix of hospitality businesses that lend an area a certain character or whatever. I think some of those should potentially fall into scope, recognising, of course, that you don't want every single application or anything, called into question. But just, I think a little bit of finessing around that detail of what constitutes strategic will be interesting. I think a big win coming out of this will be a bit of a culture mindset shift. So rather than licensing authorities, police and businesses, being a very much us versus them, battle for licenses type thing. We see in other areas of the country, other licensing authority, where things work much better in much more partnership-based approach, where regulators can recognise sort of the growth elements, the cultural elements that licensed premises bring, and vice versa, businesses also being able to understand the regulatory regime a bit better. So I think the call-in piece, very, very important, but also I think, through the policy, through creating perhaps an overarching set of sort of principles, changing that mindset away from pure enforcement will be really valuable.
Assembly Member Georgie.
Thank you, Alan. Just on some of the responses that you covered, just picking up on that. How many have you ever sat in a licensing committee on either side of it, either having as a resident requested something be called in, or supporting a client or anything like that?
As a professional, I've acted in front of licensing authorities probably a couple of thousand times.
Fantastic. And the reason I asked that question, because you'll appreciate then this point that I'm about to make, because your line of argument is very much the disposing effectively, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so please correct me, of cumulative impact zones. Now, your comments are in reference to hospitality and, in the part of the world that I live in and London, actually I'm minded to agree with you. I think where there is more hospitality, venues for drinking, clubbing, restaurants, things like that, I think people broadly on the whole are supportive, broadly, of course, depending on what part of London you live in. But then other things fall into that, like bookies, and places like that where, cumulative impact zones seem to take a back seat because local authorities will say, well, it's better that than an empty shop front. So just on that point, were your comments mainly directed towards hospitality or just cumulative impact zones in general?
Well, we're talking about the Licensing Act 2003 rather than the Gambling Act, of course. But yes, it's cumulative impact in terms of licensed premises within a cumulative impact area. Not sure if I've misunderstood the question.
No, that's all right. Because the problem is when you get to licensing committees, as you know, I think local authorities do try and do a very good job at training up their councillors that sit on them. But the reason I asked another further reason, the beginning question, and I appreciate my home borough might be very different from any others, the presumption is predominantly always in favour. And I think I've seen many an application where a local councillor will call something in, but effectively the licensing members, even of the same party, will say, look, my officers have told me there's no way we can refuse this, we're going to lose on appeal, so therefore we might as well just pass it. So I think, do you have some sort of raw numbers as to how many licenses actually get rejected?
I don't know if Jim does either, but I think it's important to remember if such advice is given by officers, legal advisors, etc., to their members, it's based upon the evidence and it's based upon the relevant statement of licensing policy that they're relying upon. So that's the reason if they do grant, and some are and some aren't, it's based upon, they'll be advised on the evidence they need to grant. I'm not saying that cumulative impact policies, there's not a place for them someplace, somewhere. But I think the context that we're talking about at the moment bearing in mind the aims of the strategic licensing pilot, or one of the aims in terms of economic growth. I think we have to consider whether cumulative impact policies and economic growth are happy bedfellows and effectively contradict each other, because you can't have them both. I don't think you can have cumulative impact policies applying the way they do and economic growth. I think they're mutually exclusive.
But then I guess my final point, getting to a place that you would, and possibly Jim, would like this country and city to be, would effectively go down the line of what the government has already passed legislation for, in effectively getting far more delegated powers to officers rather than local politicians. Now, the problem that you run up against that is it takes one unpopular thing for the mayor to decide in this strategic overview, or a council to go along with it. It takes one unpopular decision for it all to kick off, and then you have problems and it's possibly revised. So I guess from your point of view, you're looking at the policy itself, and I think from us as policymakers and people as politicians ourselves, you know, we also have to factor in what do the people want out of all of this. So do you believe what you're advocating is the middle ground, or would you say there is, you know, a broad place to make everybody happy?
Well, I think, you know, what the pilot doesn't do is take powers away from local politicians. Local politicians and not officers still make the decisions where relevant representations have been made. What I think the pilot is intended to do is to reintroduce some form of balance to promote growth and the other parts of the pilot. I appreciate it's a very, very sensitive issue, particularly for those people who live in cumulative impact areas. And that's why, of course, when applications are called in, they will be done so based upon the evidence, based upon the policies, and based upon discretion at the end of the day. All applications won't necessarily be called in. So I think local government still will have a very significant discretion, obviously tempered to an extent by what the Mayor's pilot allows for.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll move on to Assemblymember Clark, please.
Yeah, thank you and good afternoon. I'm going to ask questions around the current application process. I suppose I'll come to you first, Alan. How difficult would you say it is for businesses and those applying for licenses to navigate the current system? And that, I mean, that includes things like the advertising requirements. How difficult is it?
As a solicitor, I'm obviously biased. But I do know that lots of people that come to us have tried it themselves first and have failed miserably. Sometimes some of the applications are very straightforward and you can do them. It's a bit like filling in a passport form. It looks easy. It's not when you get to the counter. Advertising is one of the things that is easy to get wrong. You've got to get the notice perfectly worded. It's got to be in the right form, the right colour, in the right place, etc. But on top of that, you've got then the requirement to place in the local newspaper, which is expensive. We're talking between £200 and £300 on average per application. It's another cost. Jim asked me earlier whether I knew of any representations that had been made as a result of a newspaper advertisement. I don't know is a short answer, but I've never heard anyone say, I read that in the newspaper.
Sorry, would you like to add anything to that, Jim?
Thank you. I think, yeah, when it comes to, I think the key thing when it comes to advertising in newspapers, I think, you know, what is the purpose of it? It's to ensure that the local community, local residents are advised about what new applications are coming potentially to their area and any major changes to existing licenses, which is, yeah, great, we will support that. So it's not about removing that. It's about looking at how do people get information, you know, these days. Is it through local newspaper or not? Are there better ways of doing it? You know, some sort of, you know, licensing, you know, online hub or whatever it might be, that again doesn't remove and may even increase visibility of new applications to local residents and those effective, but at the same time removes what we see as sort of outdated and unnecessary cost on the business itself.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to me that in areas where you have things like active residents associations or particularly active councillors who are going to be picking up on those and spreading that seems to be when residents find out, rather than sometimes less often read local newspapers and small
And I think
ads.
local authorities are very well disposed and organised in terms of making, certainly the ones I deal with, making these applications known to the stakeholders who are interested in it.
Interesting. Apart from advertising and that requirement, are there aspects of the current process that cause businesses and venues the most delay and disruption?
Can I just, there's one more point on Councillor
Right.
Georgio's point. I mean, I don't think we should forget that the pilot isn't completely one-sided. The objectives of the pilot are not just promoting economic growth, but they are also to reduce crime and disorder and nuisance. Now, again, sometimes they won't be happy bedfellows, but there is a balance there. In terms of things which cause delay and need reform, well, sorry to go back to the old chestnut of cumulative impact, but cumulative impact, of course, inevitably means that a hearing will be required, which causes delay, causes cost, it causes uncertainty, it causes tenants who want to open a new premises to have to agree a conditional type of deal with their landlord, because obviously they can't sign the lease until the licence has been granted. And, you know, worst case scenario, it could lead to appeal, which is even more cost and uncertainty. So there is a lot of delay in the current process.
I think because of that, so when, I mean, I'm thinking of one place, and it happens to be a gambling application, which I'm going to agree with Councillor Georgiou on that, and the impact, if we were to get rid of cumulative impact assessments on gambling, I think it's very different than what we're discussing, than different types of venues. But if, because sometimes these leases are entered into on a provisional basis, so you have somebody who wants to open up an establishment and they need to go into some sort of discounted rent situation until licensing is sorted, and I think that is quite the typical arrangement. Does that then mean that it tends to be larger businesses that are able to enter into that scenario rather than the smaller ones that people, I mean, let's be honest, people like a diversified high street with lots of smaller independent places, but oftentimes I think when you have those situations and you enter into those leases, who can afford that apart from the larger businesses? I don't know if you
I
find
think
that.
absolutely it does mean that. I mean, there are landlords out there who encourage and look for smaller businesses rather than the bigger ones. But, you know, because of the cost and uncertainty, that can be a deterrent to smaller independent businesses.
Yeah. And just finally for me, and Alan, you made a point about councils being very good at making sure that residents and interested parties are aware of applications. I've had a mixed bag of experience on that. I would say sometimes yes, and I think sometimes completely not. And I think sometimes it does fall down to who's local and who's kind of sounding the alarm about different things. And I think sometimes I'm surprised, you know, I find out years later that something went unnoticed. You know, it is a mixed picture. But in your experience, who most commonly objects to licensing applications?
Well, if you're in a cumulative impact area, the responsible authorities do. The licensing authority, the police, environmental health are the holy trinity of persons making representations in CIAs. But often in central London, it's resident associations, you know, protecting, you know, the more sort of global impact of licensed premises. And some often indeed refer to and rely upon the statement of licensing policy for that. I think just going back to my point about the donut, where the more, let me call them the more intense licensed premises, the bars or the music venues, if they can't open within central London and they go elsewhere, that will sometimes attract more objections from individual local residents. Although in that case, where it's pushed out to some of the not outer boroughs, but the ones not in central London. I think I would agree with you there that the communication of applications to local residents isn't actually as good as those councils who have cumulative impact areas and who are more based centrally.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Move on to Assembly Member Marina Ahmed. Jim, Jim, just ask you to move your microphone a bit closer. Yeah, thanks.
How's that, Chair? Good.
Thank you. Good afternoon, panel. I think we've touched on this a little bit, but I just wonder, could you maybe give some bullet point answers in terms of why we need a more London-wide approach to licensing, and why do you think we need that? Jim, do you want to start?
Absolutely, Councillor. I think it's, I think to look for more consistency in, yeah, I think again it goes back to, I think in certain areas of London, the balance potentially between business and resident and police and those sorts of things. In some areas of London, that balance is very, very good. And as I talked about, where there's good partnership working between all of them, there's clearly defined like strategies set out to have good high streets, good mix of hospitality and so on. I think in other areas of London, that balance is skewed away from businesses. So I think by having a piece of work that's sort of London-wide, that sort of picks up on where the balance is good, can help decision making across the piece. Because I think it is a challenge in London, because obviously compared to other cities in the UK, you have got a number of different boroughs and a number of different licensing authorities that are all making their own decisions. In many cases, and that's absolutely how it should be. But I think there are other areas where good learnings and consistency can come through.
Thank you, Alan.
It's interesting at the moment because going back to, sorry if I keep talking about cumulative impact areas, but only a handful of London boroughs now have cumulative impact policies. So you almost have forum shopping where, as I've said, people will go to one and the other. And I'm sure it can't be the case that there is cumulative impact area, for example, there is cumulative impact just in Soho, and it can't be somewhere else as well. And I think there needs to be consistency in order to promote business, and cumulative impact is one of those things that makes business very difficult. So I think that is the consistency which I think is lacking, the fact that some councils have cumulative impact areas and some don't. And some, it's very difficult because you can't say that council should have a policy of allowing licences until 3 a.m. in the morning, because of course circumstances will be different. But some are remarkably different. So Islington and Hackney, 11 p.m. during the week, Westminster, 11:30, midnight at weekends, Wandsworth, 2 a.m. at weekends. So again, lack of consistency.
Can you give any examples of really classic cases of difficulties that cultural venues and hospitality organisations have faced when doing, working across boroughs? The challenges that they might have. I'm sure you do, Alan.
I've got 3 examples really. There was a really lovely small cocktail bar operating in a semi-outer borough. Licensed, no problem. They had no problems operating. They came to Westminster, couldn't get a licence. In the end, got a licence to be able to sell alcohol without food just till 9 p.m. for 10 people. So that's an example of the differences. A couple of jazz clubs that I've done within central London. One was refused entirely, even though planning permission had only been granted 3 months earlier. And another jazz club, an operator of international reputation, who, in their words, councils normally roll out the red carpet for them when they open in their cities. We had to have 2 bites of the cherry, and the application was eventually granted, but with some significant constraints. The third good example would be a Central London theatre where, again, sorry, it's live jazz again. I don't just do jazz. Where they, on their third attempt to allow jazz in the basement of one of their theatres till 1 o'clock in the morning, it was only on their third attempt it was granted because the premises was in the cumulative impact area.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Brian. Have you got any examples?
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies for being late. I'm really sorry. Had a day of it. Yeah, not only do I have different examples within different boroughs of London, so I own and operate the Arts Theatre in London, the Marble Arch Theatre, which is just happening, so one's inside the cumulative impact zone, the other just outside of the cumulative impact zone. But I've also spent my career working up and down the country and putting on plays and taking over venues and building theatres. I actually have a huge specialism in immersive theatre and meanwhile use and taking over spaces. The open arms that we get met with in Manchester and Sheffield and York and Wales and places that you would think on paper wouldn't be used to the sort of operation that we do and how we do it. The welcome approach there versus kind of a very constrained view of what we do. And certainly I have to fight the case every time when I go to planning or to licensing hearings and committees about why culture is important, about our cumulative impact financially, and the sheer amount of money that we bring to secondary and tertiary economies. So the vast kind of outsized impacts that theatre and late night entertainment has on the immediate surrounding, that's just sort of a given wherever I go outside of London. I've had brilliant experiences and very grateful to operate the businesses that I operate, but it is markedly different, the approach. Thank you. Sorry again for being late.
It's great to have you here. Thank you for getting here in this terrible weather. Jim, anything to add to that?
I think I think I would be repeating myself, similar examples of what people have mentioned there. And I think going back to a point I made earlier, I think where you've got new business models, new business types that don't neatly fit into a restaurant or a pub or a XYZ, where you've got operators who are looking to sort of blend different elements of hospitality under one roof, I think a lack of understanding or inflexibility around existing policies can cause problems there.
Okay, but moving specifically on then to the pilot, there will be challenges for smaller businesses and marginalised communities. How do you think the pilot will aim to address this, and I'll just open this up to whoever wants to answer it?
I'll give it a shot, yeah. I think I really welcome the pilot, and certainly speaking to my colleagues at the Society of London Theatre are really engaged with this. I guess when I look at my businesses across the portfolio, and I have a restaurant in Shoreditch, and I have 2 theatres in central London, Westminster, I think it doesn't lessen at all my responsibilities to my community, to the local residents, to those associations. I think that the pilot will address those concerns and looks to address those concerns. It's certainly very welcome for us. So yeah, I think there's those considerations. We still have those responsibilities, but that's very clear in the pilot, and we certainly really welcome it.
Right, fine. And my final question is, the Soho Society has announced that they will object to all new licensing applications. Is this reflective of a wider trend of ignoring resident need, or an example of a small section of local residents raising objection? Alan?
Yeah, I think I better pick that one up, as most of my practice is in Westminster, and I obviously followed that thread over the last couple of weeks. I don't think that's a new mandate. I suspect they have to renew that mandate each time they look at their constitution, probably on an annual or biannual basis, something like that. And from experience, that is not something new. In fairness to them, what they're effectively saying is the same as the local authority are, in terms of the cumulative impact policy. So the cumulative impact policy in Soho is that there is a rebuttable presumption not to grant any new bars or music venues, and restaurants will only be granted if it can be proven that they don't have cumulative impact. All the Soho Society are saying that that's what their mandate is. And this is the problem with the cumulative impact policy, it provides that platform, if that's the right word, for the Soho Society to say, don't grant any more licences, because that's what your own cumulative impact policy and cumulative impact assessment tells us, and all we're saying is we're reflecting that and we agree with you. So I don't think it's anything new, and I don't think it's particularly inconsistent with what the City Council's statement of licensing policy is.
Okay, right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I've got Assembly Member Lord Bailey next.
Alan, in particular, listen to you talk. It sounds like the cumulative impact policy is the thing that needs to be modified or go. Am I correct?
I think, from my experience, it's the thing that causes operators the most difficulty. If you were to ask me, what are the hurdles for hospitality venues opening within London, the clients that come to me, it's cumulative impact policies, or trading after what I call core hours, which could be midnight or 11 o'clock.
So when you look at this pilot, do you see it having the ability to take on that, modify it, change it? Because the first half of this conversation would seem like that's the crux of the matter. Can you see through this pilot some of that being challenged?
The cumulative impact policies are law. They're a creature of the Licensing Act, so only central government could remove cumulative impact policies. But I think what the pilot does, in Appendix 3, refers to applications within cumulative impact areas as being of potentially strategically important, and therefore the GLA would have the power to call in a relevant application within a cumulative impact area if they decided to do so. I think that's where the change is. And of course, from the outset, local authorities, when setting their local statement of licensing policies, have to have regard to the strategic licensing policy itself, and that of course includes aspirations including economic growth, which, as I've said, don't sit comfortably with cumulative impact. But cumulative impact is there, but I think what the pilot does is that it provides some more balance.
I come to you, Jim. Are you hoping through this pilot that some of the culture gets changed? Because if you look at people like Soho Society, who, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm new to this, their mandate, they've stated, is to oppose any new licences. That would seem like an embedded culture. The council seems to have it in this particular incident as their position as well. Anybody who's been involved in politics for 25 seconds will tell you that culture outperforms the rules every single time. So are you hopeful, or can you see an opportunity or a possibility that this pilot will help change that culture? The question, I'll come to you, Brian, on this afterwards. Are you hoping that the mayor will take people on a strategic level? Because there's a real tension here, isn't there? Because I find it hard to see the mayor saying to a Labour borough, because this is political, congratulations for saying no, but I'm about to say yes. You know, what's that big thing with the big eyeball on it, the Vegas-type light thing? Sorry? MSG Sphere. There was an argument that for London that would have been a good thing. I get it why the locals didn't want it, but could you imagine, would this pilot give the mayor the opportunity to turn that around?
I think on your first question, Lord Bailey, around the culture change and whether hopeful for that to this to sort of kickstart it. I mean, I am actually, because I think where over the years you see good licensing, for want of a better term, working for businesses, for local residents, for whatever, is, and this is all in different parts of the country, is literally where you've had everyone sort of almost operating in isolation, businesses over here, local authority over here, police over here, residents over here. And it almost is as simple as just sort of bringing people together to sort of talk through and just almost see it from the other perspective for a bit. And obviously not everyone's going to agree on everything, and that's absolutely, that's part of the process as well. But it can sort of shift the culture. I think, where we saw sort of changes, maybe sort of 5 or 10 years into the Licensing Act coming in, sort of 2010s, 2015s, where you saw some really good work going on, reducing, antisocial behaviour around licensed premises and that sort of thing. That was literally where you just got, as simple as getting the people just round the table in the same room. So I'm hopeful with this pilot, and again with the focus being front and centre on licensing rather than any other elements, it can really cut through there. I hope.
Okay. Chair, do you want to bring Zach in this point? I'll come back.
Assembly Member Polanski.
Thank you very much, Chair. Brian, welcome. You mentioned immersive theatre, and I immediately jumped on it because I think pre-COVID, and correct me if I'm wrong, we were pretty world-leading in immersive theatre. It felt like lots of theatre companies like Punch Drunk were kind of popping up all over the place, using Meanwhile space and using communities and some work as well to really enhance as well as enrichment programmes. From immersive theatre directors and producers, I know a lot of the reasons why those models aren't working anymore is because they did require on having a hospitality offering, and licensing has become the difficulty. That's all one long question to see if you agree with that and if you think there's anything else that's an issue here.
Yes, sir. So I guess I can speak. How do I do this without blowing my own trumpet? So I made a lot of the big immersive theatre shows in the UK. So Doctor Who, Time Fracture, Peaky Blinders, The Rise, Great Gatsby, any of those big immersive theatre shows were my babies back in the day. And because it sits to your point, Jim, sort of sideways to, we're not a bar, we're not a restaurant, we're not a pub, we're not a theatre, with all these sorts of things. So I had to work very closely hand in glove wherever I delivered that. And I delivered it up and down the UK. It wasn't just in London. You're absolutely right. About 36% of our revenues came from the bar. Just to give you a for instance, that would be on Peaky Blinders, a Great Gatsby, very similarly. Now, it's important context there that we had no incidents within that. There was no, we didn't create a nightclub and use our surreptitiously to go and do it. It was a massive part of the revenue, and that was a very sustainable and sustained thing right up until COVID. And actually, Gatsby was the second show back into the UK off the back of that. The other really important thing, and the Society of London Theatre impressed this upon me before coming here, and I completely agree with it, is that we can, throughout all of my venues, whether they're immersive or traditional West End venues or this temporary theatre that I've built on Marble Arch at the minute, everything can only sell alcohol to ticket buyers. We can only sell drinks to ticket buyers. In a strange way, that there's an awful lot of things that statement does, and it's been implicit on every single alcohol licence that we've ever applied from, and it's certainly the very first thing that you get from the police and Westminster, and everybody kind of doubles down on it's got to be the ticket sales. But that doesn't mean I have a dead foyer the entire time, and I can't use it. I don't necessarily need to sell alcohol for that, but pre and post show, the ability for theatres to support themselves when funding is drying up and things are being removed there gets fewer and fewer, and that is felt less in the West End because of the economies and because of our ticket sales and because of our ticket prices. But if you look at any immersive theatre show outside of the immediate, and they're still within Westminster, they're still very much within central London, they will fall foul of that, so they won't be able to use their space outside of those ticket sales. And as an audience member, it does mean you can't come in and see if you want to go and see a show. Have a drink and have a think and go into Soho Theatre and think about whether you want to go and see a show. You have to be there in order to go and see a show. I understand the principles behind it, but it's a real challenge that I think is not thought about or discussed, and I certainly felt useful to bring up.
Thank you. And Jim, that leads me to you. So immersive theatre, some of the companies Brian was mentioning them were quite big ones, like Punch Drunk have gone to, I mentioned them, to Shanghai and New York now. In terms of the opposite end of the spectrum, though, in terms of independent and small businesses, not just immersive theatres, but small theatres, small bars, how complicated is the whole process and how much is that a block? I know Alan alluded to some of it earlier.
I think, as Alan said, I think elements of it, of the licensing process, I think the small business can do themselves. I think that's fair to say. And if the licensing authority is supportive towards businesses and small businesses in terms of helping them, guide them through the process, then that makes things easier. I think where you've got a licensing authority that isn't necessarily making it as easy for businesses as they could do in terms of helping, guiding them through the licensing process, that's where you run into more issues. And we discussed as well where you've got what we see as unnecessary costs, paying for advertising a local newspaper that arguably isn't going to generate any applications, is also potentially a barrier as well. So, I think for small businesses, I think there's a big opportunity for licensing authorities in areas where at the moment it's more challenging to sort of help the small business through the process, I would say.
Thank you very much.
If you don't mind, sorry, Chair, do you mind if I just add to that? Thank you. It's not uncommon as well for immersive type theatre or different types of theatre than the norm to want to operate later at night as well. And that then becomes a real challenge licensing because of the core hour policies. You can't open after midnight, and therefore it becomes a fight to get 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to provide that sort of slightly alternative type of entertainment. Sorry, thanks.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Back to Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
I'm going to start with you, Brian, and I'm going to make a slightly cheeky comment. To get an immersive theatre going, I'll go back to my piece on culture here. I imagine when you approach a local authority and you say, I have theatre, straight away, lovely middle-class people, they imagine themselves a night out at the theatre, speaking to the actors because it's immersive, it's going to be great. That must be a much easier sell than someone who says, I want to extend my bar because there's the World Cup's on and I might have a couple of football fans who fancy a drink. And have you found that to be the case? That's my sort of slightly cheeky question. But my deeper question is London falling behind other global cities? Because you made the comment that you go to Manchester and you get greeted with open arms. You come down here and you have to sort of gird your loins and get ready. Or am I reading that incorrectly?
I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, I agree with both points. I certainly think in planning, very much so, when you come and you say, we're theatre, this is what we do, I think there's a recognition of it. There's an explainer piece, but immersive theatre is relatively new, so I have to explain what that is. And it does sit in a bit of a grey area. It is worth explaining to people exactly what that is, because it could, what you were asking for there could be run as different organisations under that, the planning or the licence that you get there. So that's important, and you don't get it specifically for one show. You get it for the building, and then you put your shows in to that building. In short, I absolutely agree with you. It is much more lenient when I've been taking immersive theatre shows to there. Although the theatre that we've just built, it took an awful lot of goodwill and help throughout the council and for all the local stakeholders to bring them alongside and get them on board. There was a lot of resistance to the Marble Arch in the first instance. Now, by the time we got to the licensing hearing, we'd managed to deal with a lot of that and make a lot of concessions, some of them really straightforward concessions, and some of them, I think, will have a genuine impact on our ability to sustain ourselves. So there were some big concessions there, and that's a very traditional theatre. It's a 600-seat theatre on that site. Sorry, to your second question, I think I answered it.
Are we falling behind other cities? Because I think that's important. I was born and raised in London. I'm 55 years old now.
Yeah.
London seems very quiet to me. If you look at, I come from the black community. That's probably obvious to you now that I think about that. But we've lost almost all of our venues.
Yeah.
Things like night moves, all of those things have completely gone. I don't know what happened to Sound Republic. What's the other one? Ministry of Sound. London seems very quiet. And is there an idea that we're falling behind other places, or is that again in my head?
No, I think that's fair. So I work in quite a lot of other capital cities all over the world as well. We're quite a global company, certainly up until 2019. So it is not unusual for me to be working in South Korea quite a lot, in Shanghai quite a lot, in Australia, New Zealand, Belgium, Dublin. So I do work in quite a few capital cities and large cities. I was thinking about this on the way here, and a friend of mine jokes that London closes at 10:30 p.m.
Yeah.
which is an anecdotal, that's one thing, but it is in South Korea. And I kind of couldn't believe that, all right, it's 11 o'clock and we can't go and see a show. We can't go, the whole thing is shut down by then. So I found that quite a fascinating kind of comment, and it's certainly something I feel when I'm in Shanghai and making theatre shows and putting on productions out there. It feels like it's a 24/7 city and there's so much to do. Now, I have to hold that in my head, and the residents' associations and their ability to live and be a part of that as well. And so it is complicated. Certainly, to your earlier question to Jim, does the mayor put himself in conflict? Potentially, yeah. And I think that is a much bigger conversation about what we want London to be. And that is a much bigger cultural conversation, for sure.
That's where the strategic piece is important. Jim, I ask you, would your members see that London is harder and harder to conduct business? Because as a politician, I see licensing, it's been presented to me, I'd argue, as the public versus business. And please, again, correct me if I'm wrong. And if you're a politician, that's one vote from one business or 100 residents, so you always go to the residents. You wouldn't even consider going the other way. Is this pilot, and is this a challenge for London to say, actually, we're going to have to go the other way as well? There has to be a more even presentation of what the things are here. I say that because I remember when we lost the E-Grand Prix, I remember a lot of people leaping up and down, celebrating, forgetting that how many people had lost their employment on the back of that decision. So I'm interested in a pilot and that can be a little bit more even-handed about the outcomes of these things, rather than responding to people who are in societies who can write a mean letter to a local politician.
I think they would agree in terms of London, or certainly, licensing in central London for many years being much more challenging than other parts of the country or internationally, makes it less attractive. And I think there's an innovation piece as well. And I think going back to that point around businesses changing, rapidly adapting, especially now with the challenges we're facing. Businesses have got to be quick, agile in terms of what they offer in terms of hospitality. If you've got a very sort of ossified licensing system like you might have in Westminster, where you've got these are our core hours, these cumulative impact policies, that doesn't move with it, you're going to look elsewhere, I think. And I think to your point there around one vote for business versus the residents' point is a good one. But and I think it's getting people thinking about, yes, that's businesses, potentially one voice there, but that's employing 20, 30, maybe even 40 people from the local area and around it as well, and just getting people thinking about that benefit to letting that license through rather than not as well.
Yeah, and I'll quickly come to Alan, and Alan, feel free to make a comment on anything else I've said, but have you seen in your world as a solicitor, someone representing business, have you seen an uptick in work or a down? Because we've watched the hospitality sector really reduce, but we've also watched it become very hard to do anything at all, and that leads me to, are you busier because it's harder to do things and they need you more, or are you less busy because there's less activity in the first place?
That's a very good question. I'd say I'm busier because it's harder. And going back to the point that Assembly Member Clark made earlier, smaller businesses just find it difficult to even get off their feet. But because of cumulative impact areas and the amount of evidence that one needs to put in to disapply the cumulative impact presumption, it's deliberately a high hurdle, and therefore it needs a lot of time, effort to get over that hurdle. I think we need to, I don't think we should throw away balance, but what's clear to me from reading the pilot is, of course, a balance needs to be maintained, but there needs to be a different emphasis, a different direction in terms of London as one of the best capitals in the world, and an emphasis on promoting that, maintaining it, and of course the economic impact point. But of course, balance is important. It won't work everywhere. It won't work at all times. But I think we need to have a root and branch review of where we're going with licensing.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before we move on to the last section of questions, I think I very much sort of take on board the point about perspective, right? And so you were saying about sort of London feels like it closes at 10:30 there, Brian, and certainly going to Barcelona, trying to find an evening meal before 9 o'clock in the evening. Good luck trying to do that. You talked a lot about the international cities that you've worked across, and obviously you're in theatre, right? So the West End outperforms Broadway considerably, but if we don't introduce this pilot, and this pilot doesn't start to transform licensing, particularly in the West End, is there a risk that the West End Theatre could fall behind?
Good question. You're absolutely right. I mean, the West End and Broadway are it's not just the shows that we make and the tertiary income that creates, and I don't even know what metrics by which you would measure it, but we're world beating in whatever metrics. It's also the soft power, and that's something that I think is really missed the world over by any government. Is actually the reason I work in all these cities is because everybody looks at London and goes, yeah, I'll have that place, that's amazing, what you're doing is the best in the world, we'll take someone out, we'll go. And I spent my entire career trying to show other people how brilliant we are, and I've got the luxury of my mum's in London at the minute, which is very rare. She's up in Manchester, and I've taken her to Warhorse, to a brand new musical last night, Hot Mess. These are some of the best shows in the world. I was so privileged to share that with her, and so proud of the theatre makers and the way that we make work. To limit that with what feels like outdated rules, or certainly not sensitive rules, and certainly not like industry-specific rules. We seemingly, when you apply, we get treated like we're opening a nightclub, and then when you get into it, you go, oh yeah, fair enough, you're just a theatre, aren't you? Okay, yeah, fair enough. But you still make all these concessions, and then very arbitrary concessions. The amount of smokers outside Marble Arch Theatre, 600 capacity theatre that we're just building, which has saved 60 jobs. It's an amazing thing. We saved all the jobs from the Arts Theatre, which is closed for refurbishment. We've opened a pop-up theatre for 2 years, saved all these jobs. We're allowed 20 people on the smoking terrace. Well, how do I enforce that? And does an audience member just walk out and say, well, I'm not seeing the show at the minute, I'm going for a cigarette? What? Do you know what? Like, there's probably 8 or 10 things that I could point out in our license. I should have brought it with me today to say that feels like somebody trying to get a win and a tick box, rather than somebody looking at the business that I've got and going, right, how can we help? How do we help you manage this? How can we make a success for you? Because if they do that, we'll be here for 10 years, and we've already transformed what was lovingly a bit of grass next to Marble Arch. It's already thriving, and ticket sales, and it's a really cool, exciting thing, and I'm so grateful to Westminster for doing it. But if you look at our alcohol licence, you'd be like, why is this here?
It's a really good example. I mean, one anecdote that I can think of, we went to Westminster, I'm not calling them out, but in this case it was in Westminster, for a licence in the cumulative impact area for a West End theatre, a very well-known one. And the police were insisting on a condition that your meeters and greeters that you meet when you go to a theatre, it's a very civilised process, isn't it? Can I look in your bags? That these all had to wear yellow coats. And it's the theatre. I mean, wearing a yellow coat outside a theatre, to show that you're security. So Brian's absolutely right. Some of the conditions that are imposed just because premises are in cumulative impact or areas can be ridiculous.
Sounds like somebody who's trying to flog something that would otherwise only be sold to Lib Dem politicians, to be honest. I'm not sure who would be wearing a coat on a day like today in any case. We'll move on to our last set of questions for this panel. Alex Wilson, to start off with.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, panel. Very interesting discussion already, and hopefully it will continue to be so. So in your introductory remarks, Alan, you said that I've written this down rightly, hospitality basically needs everything it can get to help, given the situation it's in. And Jim, I think you made a similar comment that anything that kind of puts licensing front and centre as being a barrier is welcome. So I think we can get a strong feeling that overall this approach is being welcomed, and I guess that's because the sort of hope and expectation is that decisions made at a more strategic level are likely to be more permissive and more encouraging rather than more restrictive. And I think that's something that I share that welcoming. But I'm keen to understand if you, how much you think that really will help reduce the burden and make it easier to grow these activities and ultimately employ more people as a result of that. So whoever wants to go first, please.
Happy to. Thank you. Thank you for the question. I mean, again, I think we've not had a specific sort of focus on licensing sort of project like this for, for a number of years, I would say, if at all. So part of my hope comes from the fact that given we're sort of focusing on licensing specifically here, that that we'll have some cut through on this point around looking again at some of these very stratified sort of rules that have sort of grown up over time in certain areas and be able to sort of clear that away. I think a good opportunity to just to bring people around the table together and just sort of say, look, to some of the examples being given here, and just sort of say, look, do we really want this to be sort of governing how we sort of manage businesses and encourage growth in London, and that sort of thing. So I think there's obviously a lot of other challenges for businesses out there at the moment, and it's solving licensing isn't going to impact those. Isn't going to completely solve things, but I do think giving businesses the confidence to either adapt and evolve their operations that they've got in London already, or encourage new businesses to sort of come in when they see that the licensing rules are being looked at in a more sort of pro-growth, pro-business way, I think will be a positive. So we're hopeful it will do something.
I think, if you don't mind if I follow up on Jim's point, what the pilot provides is a very structured and layered and proportionate way of encouraging some of the more positive things arising out of hospitality. And the trouble is, I think Jim said earlier, licensing was always supposed to be permissive under Licensing Act 2003, and it's turned into quite the opposite. So what the pilot does is, the first thing it says is that local authorities have to have regard to the pilot. Local authorities have to consult with the Mayor's Office in terms of policy. The Mayor's Office can make representations which will be given the same appropriate weight as representations by another responsible authority, police, environmental health, etc. And of course, the ultimate option is the call-in. So I think there are various layers there which sit very well proportionately within the current system.
Brian, have you got anything to say?
Yeah, not much more to add beyond. My business is growing. We're taking on more theatres, buying a theatre, refurbishing it. I intend that to be a group of theatres in the next 5 to 10 years. Yes, it absolutely will lead to more jobs. I think the thing that I am certain of and pushing for and really, like you say, an even-handed sort of approach to it, excited by, is that it will help me run a more sustainable business. That's the thing that I'm really excited by, is actually, it's not about going, right, okay, can I have 35 West End theatres? That's not how my industry works. But actually, when I look at a business model like Gatsby or Peaky Blinders or Doctor Who Time Fracture, any of those kind of immersive shows, and 34% of our revenues are driven by bar sales, yes, it absolutely will make that more sustainable. Those shows are closed. It did not work in the long run. Gatsby ran for 7 years, closed because of COVID, and we couldn't get it restarted again. Just too many factors. It was too much risk. It was too hard to do. Great loss for me personally, but for audiences and the people that brought to the theatre. 33% of those audiences had never been to see a West End show, and 33% of those audiences that came to Gatsby then went on to see a West End show. It's quite an exciting, amazing group of people. It's not just can we build and make ourselves more sustainable, it's that outsized impact on our audiences, and then what we can do for London and for tourism and for people coming and seeing our shows as well. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's really... I think a few changes in the right direction will make an outsized impact. So thank you for
Okay. I must confess, I've never been to immersive theatre, but it sounds rather fun. I think I'll definitely.
It's for the
Make an
brave.
effort.
I'll give you that.
No, okay. I mean, the other thing that I sort of try and keep in mind is that obviously we are in a broader context, wider context where things are very, very difficult for the hospitality industry. And yes, so we welcome this change in licensing as something that could help. But within the wider context of 100,000 jobs having been lost across the country, and what about 30 to 40,000 of those, I think, within London, this is great. But would a more helpful policy change be to reverse the national insurance rise?
Well, yes, from a hospitality perspective, as you pointed out, we've seen the impact in real time. Yeah, that would be something. Yeah.
Thanks. Assembly Member Wilson, do you not appreciate that you take part in an immersive theatre every month called Mayor's Question Time? Right, Assembly Member Polanski. Right, so I wanted to just come back to, in fact, my first question, which was, does this go far enough, right? So this is very much based on replicating, to a greater or lesser extent, what we have in planning rules across London at the moment. And the challenge that I see with that is that you can have local authorities who are very supportive and work very well in partnership, as many of you have referred to, with the industry to make sure that you get the best application on the table, and you find some compromise effectively before it goes to the committee to take it forward. Whereas other boroughs are very obstinate, and effectively that sort of just kills off the opportunities that might have otherwise happened in that particular local authority, creating, effectively sort of replicating that donut challenge that you've already presented a few times, Alan. How do we make sure that this new pilot doesn't just replicate the challenges that we've currently got with planning?
I think it's a huge step in the right direction. I am concerned that that there is power to effectively turn the tables, and it's only a 5-year pilot, and if we're focusing on economic impact, I'm sure Jim would agree with this. 5 years isn't long when it comes to seeing a real change, and I genuinely hope that if it works, it continues to make a longer benefit. And I'm sorry I keep going on about cumulative impact policy. It's not just about cumulative impact policies, but cumulative impact policies is a good example. So we're talking about growth, attracting more people to London, reversing COVID, getting us back on our feet. And cumulative impact policy say we don't want any more people in cumulative impact areas because it has an adverse impact on residential amenity, public transport. Effectively, that's what cumulative impact is. It can't cope with the infrastructure, can't cope with the amount of people in the geographical area. And the CIA say no more. And actually what we should be saying is, come on, the doors are open.
I think buy-in at the start is important. I think for this to succeed, certainly from a licensing authority perspective, and from a sort of police enforcement perspective, where there may maybe looking at this with skepticism, or there may be like, well, this is how we do things. But I think at the start of this process, the ability to sort of bring people along, bring people round, will hopefully be the difference between this sort of working or not working. I think that is quite important at the start to sort of resolve that, to hopefully avoid it being left on the shelf or anything like that.
And Brian, and also I appreciate obviously didn't get the chance at the start of the meeting, but if there's anything else that you wanted to add in terms of part of your contribution.
No, I think the only thing I would say is be brave with it. It's a pilot. It's 5 years. That's what we're here for. We're here to try and change that culture and to keep lifting London as one of the best cities in the world. It is, and I'm from Manchester, and I'm saying that. And I say that with a lot of respect to how hard it's going to be and to those kind of political conversations. I think to Lord Bailey's point about the Mayor putting himself in conflicts, yeah, I think that's true, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. I think we should help, and we should all pull together and get that key early buy-in. But that is what we're discussing here, and we shouldn't shy away from that.
I think the protections are there as well. The pilot doesn't do away with all the protections. The licensing objectives is that there. The local statement of licensing policy is there. I just hope there's a change in emphasis.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the challenge that you've presented us from the start is that it's complicated, and the complication adds enough to make sure that you're simplifying it, because it's effectively a sort of additional layer, isn't it?
It's a start.
Yeah, okay. And I think finally going back to your point, Brian, I think if there's you're saying you're from Manchester, you believe in the devolutionary decision making, and I think hopefully somebody else from Manchester is going to feel the same and want to make sure that we're able to grow the economy here in London. So thank you very much to our panel for their contributions, and really appreciate you coming down on a sweltering hot day with challenges on public transport elsewhere. We're going to take a 5 to 10 minute break depending on where our next guests are before we have our second panel. But a huge thank you to you all for this morning. Thank you. We'll take a short adjournment.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the London Assembly's Economy, Culture and Skills Committee meeting. We now continue our discussion regarding the strategic licensing pilot for London. In the chamber, we now have Justine Simons, who is our Deputy Mayor for Culture and Creative Industries, and we also welcome Marcia Cuye, MBE, who is the head of the 24-hour London and strategic licensing at the GLA. We've kick off straight away with the questions, if you don't mind. And Justine, if I can come to you, if you could let us know what the Mayor's overall aims and objectives of this strategic pilot are.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to come and speak to you today. So I think just coming back to first principles, nightlife is really central to our success as a global city. It's worth 21 billion every year to the London economy, and 1.4 million people, Londoners, work in the nighttime economy. But beyond that, it's fair to say that it's kind of more than that. It's about our sense of belonging to this city. It's about our identity, our reputation, our community, our human connection. So it's all of that. But one of the parts of the system that is really holding us back is the licensing system. Now, we've got some data that shows that if the mayor, for example, gets exactly the same powers as the mayor of New York, the data shows us that we would be in for a £2 billion boost to the economy. But what we've got is a kind of system that it's inconsistent, it's complex, it's not so transparent. We've got 33 separate licensing policies across London. And lots of them are kind of analogue in a way. You know, I don't think we're operating in the most efficient way as a kind of team London. We've got lots of analogue, we've got paper, we've got PDFs, we've got scans, we've got paying for an advert in a local paper. So I think there's lots to be done. I mean, when we've spoken to businesses, they talk about it being overly complex, expensive and lengthy. And over 50% of businesses want to see reform, really. On the flip side, we've got a golden opportunity to unlock major growth, and that's really at the heart of it. If we can improve the system, we'll get more jobs, more growth, and improve our reputation. I mean, I think it's fair to say that we're already doing a lot in this space, working with the nightlife industries and the sector in London. We've already got our Culture at Risk office who's doing a lot of casework. We've already protected for the first time in the London Plan grassroots music venues, clubs and pubs. So we're really making good progress on that, and I can share some stats with you if you want later. But licensing is the area that we're falling behind in. We know that in London, 82% of licences get approved, and the national picture is 91% of licences get approved. So even that kind of statistic alone tells you that that's lost growth for London. That, you know, if we could even get up to the UK-wide figures in terms of percentage of approvals, that alone would really kind of give us a big boost. So yeah, this is really about bringing licensing into the strategic thinking of London. I guess a metaphor is an orchestra. So we already are doing successful work in strategic planning, transport, housing, environment. So it's like we've got the orchestra, but there's no piano. You know, licensing is the missing thing in the orchestra. And imagine how great it would sound if we had a piano in that orchestra.
Great analogy. I thought with all the talk about jazz earlier, you might have chosen a wind instrument, but I'll pass on to Assembly Member Georgiou.
Thank you, Chair. Justine, I think what would be good, because we know the Mayor likes more powers, you know, it's probably an understatement. But I think just on this first initial section, it just would be good to get an understanding, because I get the impression that your understanding of what the Mayor wants is a more, should we say, greater liberalisation of the licensing regime. You know, that's the impression that we've got. Or am I wrong in saying that in some elements you want it to be more restrictive, you know, to protect local interests and things like that? I mean, just very briefly, what is your interpretation of where the Mayor wants to take this?
I mean, is it worth me just saying first what the new powers are? Or do you feel?
No, I mean, we've got an understanding,
Yeah,
but just in terms of, you know, we've had the briefing for the first panel, but
Yep.
just, you know,
Good.
as you're his deputy mayor, you know, what your interpretation is.
I mean, what we want is one clear, efficient, transparent system for London. We want an economic boost for London. It's really clear that that's on the table if we get this right. We want to improve our reputation as a global nightlife capital, so that Londoners and visitors can really make the most of our city. And we want also a bit of culture change, I think it's fair to say. We want all the bits of the jigsaw in London working together better. Boroughs, businesses, communities. That's really the kind of what success looks like for us.
Right. But once again, I feel like you've just stopped short of saying what the primary ambition is, which obviously is economic, and we can all understand that, and all of us wants our GVA to be better coming out of London. But you've said economic boost. You've referenced the 82% approval rate for licences in London compared to 91% for the country. You've mentioned the £2 billion New York figure as a comparison. So therefore, is it safe to assume the primary driver of this is to liberalise the licensing system?
I mean, we want to see London open after 11 p.m. We want to see, we want to see a return to the original spirit of the 2003 Licensing Act, which was essentially to approve and, assuming those 4 criteria are met, you approve. So we want to get more licences through. We want to get London firing in all cylinders as a nightlife capital, yeah.
And the vibe that I'm getting, though, it seems a lot of this seems to have, and, mind you, I may share, not to, this is for me to ask questions, I may share some of the sentiments in some parts of London where we need a greater nightlife. I think even in outer London, there's massive dead zones of where, younger people in particular can't go out clubbing, can't have a good night out, get a late night meal, have a late night drink. So I empathise with a lot of that. But it seems like a lot of the focus around this, because I've heard it mentioned multiple times now, is effectively looking at Westminster K&C and Hackney, where I know there's a lot of controversy over the restrictive licensing after a certain time. I mean, is that your view? This is more inner London focused rather than outer London?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's a London-wide strategic policy we're looking at, and that will affect all London boroughs, in a strategic way.
But then equally, it's not a one-size-fits-all, is it? You're not going to have many nightclubs wanting to open up in Bromley, are you? I'm just being realistic. I'm just saying we can have a London-wide strategy, but clearly, Marsha, you may want to drop in on this, just where there is a more direct approach as to where you're looking at.
I mean, it's a London-wide policy. There's no priority areas. There's nothing underneath that. We're in the midst of designing this thing, but the idea is to work with all London boroughs to improve and make the system more efficient and work in concert at a strategic level.
So as far as you're concerned, there is no inner or outer London view with regard to this strategy. Okay, Marsha, was there anything you...
Of course. You've mentioned nightlife and nightclubs quite a lot with this policy, and what we're trying to do is not just about nightlife.
No, I appreciate that.
It's a lot wider than that. So it's thinking about how other areas, whether it's inner London or outer London, can benefit from having activities, whether or not it is night markets or whether or not it is immersive theatre, as I heard earlier, opening a bit later. It's about giving a balance for the whole of London, not just inner London.
No, I appreciate that. I think if you ask me, would I like a restaurant in my local area to be open a bit later so Mrs. G and I can have a cheeky wine, fine. Well, I'm not really a wine drinker anyway, but that's by the by. Oh, don't tell the French. But, I appreciate I focus on nightclubs, but the reason I use that is because it's one of those examples where the moment the locals find out you're opening a nightclub near them, that's when it all kicks off, and probably that's why I understand possibly the reason for this policy. But I appreciate that it's, generally surrounding hospitality and that sort of area. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to Assembly Member Ahmed, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I've lost bear with me a moment, panel, and it's lovely to see you. Thank you for coming today. Could you tell us, will the Mayor be looking to introduce a more flexible approach to licensing, allowing for businesses to stay open later into the night? I mean, what is the pilot about, effectively?
There you go. Yeah. So in answer to your question, yes, it is. The main thing that has already been mentioned by Justine and which I've heard earlier, it's about how
Marsha, I'm sorry, could you bring the mic a little bit closer to you, please?
Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sorry, my apologies. It is about that. The key thing is around how we become more aligned to other major cities across the world. So the pilot includes a number of initiatives to enable us to do that. There's the strategic licensing policy, which you've heard about previously, I'm sure you're aware of. And one of the key things actually is around the GLA becoming a responsible authority. So that puts us on the equal standing with other responsible authorities to allow us to be able to get involved much more earlier in the process. Then we also, the statutory consultee, that enables us to work with boroughs around their policy, ability for them to consult with us, ensure it aligns with our strategic licensing policy as well, so that we can ensure there's consistency across all 33 boroughs across London. Obviously, ultimately, he does have the opportunity to call in discretionary where he wants to align anything that needs to align strategically across London and to his policy. But there are additional things that we're also focusing on as well, which is around the London licensing playbook. So that is us working across all licensing stakeholders in order to bring that consistency, in order to bring that best practice, in order to improve the licensing landscape across the whole of London for everybody. And then finally, one of the things that we want to be able to focus on is data. So as we've started this project, we have struggled a lot with data. As mentioned previously by Justine, you have a lot of different boroughs using different systems in different ways, which makes it very difficult to be able to collectively across London be able to understand what this landscape actually looks like in practice in order to enable us to make better decision making. So data is another key thing that we would like to be able to focus on this project as well.
Thank you, Marsha. You've answered questions about local differences, and I think you've been quite clear about that. But can you tell us how interventionists, the Mayor and the GLA, will be in their consultee role on all local statements of licensing policy? And will there be accounting for local differences in these policies?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, the Mayor and the government are very clear that the decision-making remains at a local level. I think what we're trying to do is work together to make it a much more efficient system. So right now, for example, we've got appeals happening. And that's where the real inefficiency and cost happens, because then if you're a business, you've got to fight an appeal. You know, we've heard businesses, it's costing like £40,000. We've even had an example the team have got where a business, it cost them £250,000 to go through the appeal system. And then we've got, from our side, you know, a case might end up with us, with the culture at risk team. I'm then writing a letter to support that appeal, etc., etc. So I think that's the area, you know, it's the kind of post kind of application where things go a bit wrong or they don't get approved, where I think we can just do a lot better. And, you know, if we are kind of at the table at the start, the idea is that we prevent things going to appeal. We're all just around the room at the right time. Things can get approved, we can have the conversation, and they don't trip into a very expensive crisis that costs us, it costs the taxpayer, it costs boroughs, it costs businesses. So that's the kind of principle really, is that we want that, of course, local decision making is at the heart of this, remains at the heart of this. And we want to avoid all the kind of costly appeals around that. And we want to avoid call-ins, you know, and that's how we'll do it, is by working in partnership at the beginning of the process. Honestly, success looks like we don't call anything in because it's all working so brilliantly and nothing's kind of falling out of the system.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come to you, Deputy Mayor, then in your utopia where there's no callings and nothing changes, that would be easy to achieve. Just keep out of it. Then local councils would have what they want. There would be no need to call in. And I say that because it goes to the point that Assemblymember Ahmed made around how interventionist will the mayor be, because there is great differences between what boroughs want, often driven by politics. I was going to say illegitimately, but maybe I shouldn't say that, and legitimately driven by pure difference. I used to live in Portobello Road. We have a very different outlook to the place I live now in Romford. So how are you going to navigate that if the mayor is not going to be interventionist? Is he prepared to take on a Labour council to tell them they were wrong and that it's right for London?
Thanks. So you started by saying this kind of utopian situation, right? Why are we getting involved in this thing if it's all working okay? The thing is, it's not working okay.
I didn't say if it's all. I said if you want it to be utopian, keep out of it, and you won't have to have any arguments with anyone.
But the system is broken. That's my point. Licensing is holding us back. We've got 33 different licensing systems. When the Nightlife Task Force polled businesses, over 50% of operators said the process is too complex, too expensive, and too lengthy. They're saying that a license application can take between 3 months, it could take 8 months. They just don't know. They describe it as the Wild West. And, they're saying we just can't run a business with that level of uncertainty. I think the other thing to say is, the other thing that came through our conversations is that the burden doesn't fall equally on all businesses. So small businesses, grassroots, they're hit a lot harder because they just don't have the budgets to go through a lengthy appeal process. There's no data. As Marcia was saying, we don't know what's getting approved, what's not getting approved. There's no transparency. I'll give you an example. Hackney Council, a few years ago, they ran a fantastic pre-application programme, which was with lots of businesses, and they wanted to kind of socialise them and get them kind of used to what the process was and what the likely outcomes were, and get them, up to speed on educating them really on the licensing system. And once they'd all gone through that process, half of them elected not to apply for a licence because what they'd learned in that process was how difficult and how risky it was. So I think my point to you is that, this is really clear evidence that the system could be improved. And the success looks like, and not a call-in, success looks like, let's work together with boroughs to improve the system. And if I can speak to your question about where boroughs are on this, we're doing lots of work with boroughs. I hosted a round table with boroughs. We've got a monthly borough sounding board, so we're keeping in close contact with boroughs. And our playbook, which will be the kind of chapter and verse how we'll deliver licensing across London with all the different partners, that will be co-designed with boroughs. So there's lots and lots of engagement, a lot of co-design. I mean, when I hosted the round table with boroughs, the kind of top things that came through were they want a shared vision. We all agree with that. We all want a shared vision. They want us to define strategic, and that work is happening. It'll be part of the secondary legislation process. They want balance. They want community, nightlife, safety, and businesses working together. They want to bring people together. This is what Boris said really clearly. We want to work collaboratively with all the different parts of London planning, licensing, police, councils, etc. And also they said we don't want any extra cost burden. So to my earlier point, if the councils are forced to go through a lot of costly and lengthy appeals, and we can pull that out of the system, that's going to save them a lot of money. It's going to make it a lot smoother and
Deputy
easier.
Mayor, you've told me what everybody else is going to do. You haven't said what the mayor's going to do. And what's really important there, all of that I happen to agree with. It'd be great if everybody got along, but they don't. And what does the mayor do when it goes wrong? Look what happened with the MGM whatever it was, the big eyeball-looking situation, the mayor hid behind the government. He didn't come out and make a statement. He didn't say yes or no. He said it was somebody else's. And my point is, you are about to embark on a piece of work where you'll be dealing with 33 boroughs who all have a very different view of the universe. Many things you will probably be able to sort out at officer level and get this is how the world's going to work. But there is a real difference between what goes on in Havering to what goes on in Hammersmith, for instance. Yeah, there will be a point when the mayor will be asked to intervene. Is he prepared to intervene to make these things work?
Yeah, the answer is yeah. The answer is yeah. But what I'm saying to you is...
that's fine. That's all I need to know. At what level and how early? Because things will get called in. The
formal level of intervention is the call-in, but what I'm trying to convey to you is that we see that as a last resort option. Our strong preference is that we work together with boroughs, and that's why co-designing the system, working on the monthly sounding board, all the things that we're doing with boroughs are all about working better together.
Okay, I am beginning to trespass on somebody else's question, so I'll let them ask their question, and I'll come back in later on. Chair.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. We wanted to talk about that relationship with the boroughs, and so I'm going to hand over to Assemblymember Bukhari, who's online.
Yeah, you did kind of go into my questions, but never mind. It's okay. It's good to hear that it's good to hear that there is co-designing and a shared vision with boroughs, and to make sure that you're all working together. And other Assembly members have kind of raised their concerns about the fact that not all boroughs are the same and similar. So what are you going to do to cater for those differences? One of the things that the panel guest said in our previous discussion was that Wandsworth had a cumulative impact policy, but other boroughs didn't. So are you going to be making sure that every borough has a policy on these cumulative impact areas?
No.
Why not? Why not?
The mayor, what we're looking at with the mayor is strategic call-in powers. Cumulative impact zones are not something that's within this legislation. In terms of cumulative impact zones, the principle really, I think, is about getting the right hours in the right places rather than blanket bans. Secondary legislation will kind of tell us a bit more detail about how we'll interact at that kind of detail level, but I think it's just really about being proportionate and evidence-based. But the strategic licensing is about the call-in. That's the kind of particular power that the mayor will get through the legislation, if that makes sense. And remember, all boroughs will set their own licensing policies. It will all remain at a local level. But it just means that for example, when they change their policies, they'll have a duty to consult the mayor, and that will again be all about us working in concert together.
Okay, so
I think Marcia wants to add something, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Justina's mentioned on our role as a consultee, and that's actually quite key to this. You're right, there are 33 different boroughs with 33 different policies. But obviously, they're reflecting their own local areas as to the reason why they've got those policies. And from a mayor's perspective, he'll be looking at that strategically across the whole of London. And that's how we can get that consistency that you mentioned that is actually different, is by looking at those policies and to make sure that they are aligned strategically across London. And we, as a consultee, will also be engaging individually with those boroughs. We'll be forming a relationship through that role, and also as the role as a responsible authority as well, working within that system that allows us to be able to be sharing best practice and be able to ensure that there is consistency across all of those boroughs.
So one of the proposed priorities for this pilot is to ensure a proportionate approach to the use of the cumulative impact assessments. What does that actually mean?
Do you want to answer that one?
So, as you're aware, there are some cases where a cumulative impact is designed to manage saturation of businesses in an area, preventing a well-run businesses from opening. But there are other areas that the London planners designate as London nighttime growth areas. The policy proposes that where a CAA is in an area that the London plan identifies as a nighttime activity, licensing authority should consider whether the CIA remains proportionate and evidence-based. So the policy encourages London licensing authorities to avoid blanket or standard conditions as they undermine fair and proportionate decision-making.
So does that include, I know that Westminster, for example, includes their analysis on antisocial behaviour and noise complaints. Is that something that you'd be also making sure there is a pan approach, or is it going to be borough approach?
Everything that the Mayor will be considering will be based on evidence. The only evidence he can consider in this process is whatever evidence is considered locally. We cannot consider any other further new evidence on that base. So everything, saying that a decision is made locally based on evidence, the Mayor would make the same decision based on those same evidence. So it would be evidence-based, proportionate and evidence-based.
And that evidence is provided by the local boroughs and the council and people who are perhaps doing surveys or providing you stats like from the police, etc. That's what you mean by evidence?
Whatever evidence that's been put forward as part of the application is what we'll be considering. From the council, from the applicant, from representations. It's whatever evidence is being put forward locally is the same evidence that will be considered by the Mayor.
So one of the things that have been discussed over this recent Oxford Street development, for example, is a risk of local residents not being heard, especially when it comes to perhaps more al fresco dining and restaurants and bars along the high street. Where do you get the evidence to base any decision about that kind of area of licensing?
Are we talking about pavement licensing? Because pavement licensing and al fresco is out of scope for the strategic licensing project.
All right, that's fine. So that wouldn't be part of the discussion at all within your remit.
No, pavement licensing and al fresco dining is out of scope. This is purely on premises licensing.
Okay, that's good to know. Excellent. So when it comes to consultations and things like that, that is not within your remit.
Consultation in relation to
anything to do with licensing or development or anything in terms of planning decisions that are being made by the councils. I want to know whether there's any kind of alignment between planning and licensing at all.
I think the main alignment would be around what we're considering around the agents of change, but... So the main alignment is what's set out in the London plan around the agents of change, but in terms of whether or not you're asking whether or not the licensing project will intervene in any of those areas, the answer to that is no.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have. Thank you.
Assemblymember Georgie.
Just very quickly, Justine, may I cheekily ask, you
No.
know, is the... no,
Whatever it is.
I know you guys love a good cheeky question. Does that mean, you know, pursuing this and given where you started at the beginning in relationships with the boroughs now, does that mean the Mayor has fully embraced the free market and capitalism to determine what should go where? Because effectively, cumulative impact zones are to restrict, you know, certain businesses proliferating in a certain area. Does that mean the Mayor's embracing the free market on this, and anybody that could open up should open up?
Listen, we're interested in how we can grow the London economy, how we can boost jobs, how we can build our reputation, how we can make our nightlife even better than it already is. That is the driver. We want more people enjoying nightlife in our capital city. That's it. You know.
I just want to know if Assembly member...
If you define that as capitalism, then, you know.
You're for it?
We want economic growth, yeah.
Okay, all right, that's...
Yeah, I mean...
It's right. I think the Mayor needs to change parties, but thank you, Justine, on that point. I'll leave it with you, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean...
It's literally called the Labour Party, so it's all about jobs, but there we before we move on to the final bit, which actually we started to touch on in terms of the call-in powers and so on, I just wanted to go back to that point about the relationship with boroughs, but obviously I don't know how many applications there are in any given year. You probably have some figures in terms of how many licensing applications there were last year. Have you got that to hand, Marsha?
I have an indication that it was over 4,000 a year.
Okay. So you've got over 4,000 applications last year. Obviously, it will go up and down depending on economic circumstances and so on and so forth. 33 boroughs and and the city effectively have the resources in order to process that. They may not, some will process it at a different pace and all the rest of it. But do we have enough resources to review every single one of those over the year? And how do we make sure that we're not part of the reason why applications are delayed?
We're in the process of designing that. I have to get used to this, my apologies. We're in the process of designing the service for the Greater London Authority, and it will be designed in such a way that it can manage all of the applications that will come in. As you can understand, we'll be obviously looking through it with the eyes of what aligns to the strategic licensing policy, so we will not be intervening, as you're aware, on all of those.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the vast majority of those you're not going to give a second glance, really. But I guess that somebody's got to sift through those in the same way that you have to go through a lot of job applications when you get job adverts going at the moment. You've got to have some sort of system to decide which ones get a second look and potentially, obviously, further work. You said about the collaborative approach, but you're not going to do that on 4,000 applications a year. So how are you going to make sure that this is coming in this summer, that you've got those resources good to go with the right level of competency within that team to hit the ground running?
The key thing for us is making sure we're quite clear about what the information is that we need to be able to process, looking at those applications, understand what's in those applications, and ensuring that any kind of internal procedures, internal training aligns to that, and also gathering learning that we're learning from boroughs, from our sounding board that we meet with them monthly, around what are the key considerations that we need to consider as becoming a responsible authority for London. So we are doing a lot of engagement to understand what that means for us, in order to be able to understand statistically what does that mean in terms of resources to be able to manage that level of volumes. If you can think about it in terms of any form of service that you'll put in place, what you're talking about there is sifting through. So as you mentioned, there are some applications that will fall outside the scope that we would want to have a look at in any further detail. So like anything, the earlier part is probably going to be the quickest part, but then it's the part that goes as we go through the service that we would need to consider how we then manage that element of it. But that is things that we are thinking about now.
So this comes into play this summer, right? So have you already recruited the members of staff? What sort of level of staffing are you looking at? How are you going to make sure that's reviewed to ensure that we don't have a delayed process?
Yeah, well, you're building a test service, aren't you? Yeah.
We are starting to look to recruit that staff. We have mentioned 2 boroughs that we are looking. They might be a bit worried that we might be dipping in their resource pool for that. But yes, we have started to look at resourcing those staff over, and they will start to, you might see ads start coming up very shortly for those, but we are looking to, and the old idea is that how we do this, that it's phased in. This is very new to the GLA, so I hope you're not expecting a big bang to happen once the service starts. We need to make sure we're learning along the way, and that's how we understand whether or not we've got the resource levels right, whether or not we need to go up or down on those resource levels as we go through it.
I mean, in this seat, I'm not sure necessarily dreaming of going night clubbing although actually, at 2 o'clock in the morning it might be cooler, so to do that. But I've got Assemblymember Polanski who'd like to come in.
Thanks, Masha. I just wanted to ask what good looks like, because just as listening to that conversation with the chair, I thought, like, what is the expectation here if this goes well? And then you said, don't expect a big bang. And I thought, well, okay, what if we're having this conversation in a year's time, what kind of changes should we see?
Do you mean changes to the service, or do you mean changes to London? So I think Justine can answer changes to London, but I can answer changes to the service.
Yeah. You do that and I'll do it.
In terms of changes to the service, I think that it is ensuring that we've got a service in place that is efficient, that is, when I say efficient, I mean cost effective as well, is quite key. As we learn, as we go through, and as we improve data and an understanding. So if you can imagine that there's a new team, we're hoping to get some expertise from other boroughs that's done this previously as well, but it depends on who applies. But as we learn and as we go along, I would expect as time goes on that we become a much more streamlined and efficient service. We'll have a greater understanding around the role that we're playing and how we fit into the system. So I would see in 2 years' time that we've got a much more streamlined and efficient system. And as Justine mentioned, that our role as a responsible authority should hopefully then result in there being less hearings and also less need for the mayor to call in.
So if we're talking about KPIs, it would be less hearings and less call-ins?
we will be working on our KPIs as well.
Oh, sorry, your mic went then.
Yeah, we will be working on our KPIs as well. So yes, it would include some elements of how well or how not we are doing against that. As you're aware, one of the key things that will happen as part of this project is that there will be an independent valuation as well, which will be able to show how we're doing and how we're doing against our KPIs, which we will be setting as well. So that will be something that will be independently done and not done by the GLA.
We've said we'll do an evaluation after 2 years.
Okay, great.
So
thank you both. Thanks, Chair.
That'll be important to see.
Brilliant, thank you. Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Where are we? How will the Mayor ensure that the calling power does not damage the ability of local authorities to pursue their own licensing priorities? I go back, Deputy Mayor, to my attention around dealing with councils who are not on the same page as the Mayor. How's he going to do that?
Well, this is just all about creating a kind of system that works better for London. So always the power and the responsibility for local licensing is going to remain with local boroughs. That's got to be like front and centre, and the Mayor is clear about that, and government is clear about that. What's changing is that we're at the table, basically. If boroughs want to review or change their licensing policies, they'll consult with us, and we are going to be able to set out a kind of London-wide vision for licensing. And then I think, we're doing our absolute best to work, hand in glove with boroughs. We've really listened to them. We've got the playbook, which is a jointly crafted thing. We've got our monthly sounding boards. And listen, worst case scenario, if there is a problem that can't be resolved, the magistrates' court is the ultimate. There's no way in which the Mayor will get in the way of that. There is a legal process already for final appeals, and it will remain. Courts of law.
I've been in politics long enough to know the focus is when it goes wrong, not when it goes right. Let's be clear, if it goes right, great, but it's when it goes wrong the problem arises. And I accept that, the Mayor getting involved earlier on, saying to everybody this is effectively our London plan for licensing, may have some effect on some authorities. But you do have some authorities who pursue their licensing angle for what they consider very good reasons, and they will come in direct conflict with what the Mayor is going to do. And there's a point where you can't negotiate that away because they just, he has his point, they have theirs. So I'm always interested in how does the Mayor navigate that? What conversations will the Mayor have very early on to say, look, you have a local priority, but I have a sub-regional, a London-wide priority, that's going to have to take precedence. Can you imagine a situation where you as Deputy Mayor would have to say to a council, we don't agree, this is important for London, and we're hoping that you'd be part of that, and if you're not, well, here's what we're going to do instead. Now, A, under this pilot, do you actually have the powers to disagree and make something happen? And B, do you have the will to push that through if need be?
I mean, the answer to that is the call in power.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the legislation is giving us.
So you're saying you do have the power?
We do have the power,
okay.
Yeah, and we will use the power. But
okay,
what I'm saying to you is our goal is to use it as a power of last resort.
I accept the Mayor doesn't run around waving these big stick, hitting people over the head, does that, except when it comes to Oxford Street. I get that, but I'm just want to make sure that we are not just loading up the GLA with more work, making an extra step, and then it will make no difference. The Mayor is going to have to do something different if there's going to be benefit for London. I also want to ask you, Marsha, a very direct question, sort of administrative one. The team that you're in, that the Deputy Mayor lead that you're in, you're about to take on more work. That's what it seems like to me. Am I incorrect?
Do you mean in terms of when do you say more work, be more specific?
Well, you're now going to have conversations with councils. You're going to have to overlook some of what they're doing. They're going to write to you. Hopefully, they'll say, we've got an idea. What do you think? So there's going to be a lot of to and fro. Do you literally, and I mean this in literal, do you have the time and the staff to carry out that function?
I have the time and we will have the staff to carry out that function.
So Deputy Mayor, you're in a process of growing that team? Okay. I just need to know, because I worry about any extra admin step that isn't resourced, because then it becomes a regulation that slows down business.
Yeah. No, it's definitely will be properly resourced.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, let me ask you another semi-difficult question. Can you imagine the use of the calling power to aid a local authority? You know, because you talk about the legal route that will always remain, but the mayor's input into that could make that irrelevant. It could save a local authority a lot of money if it was called in and the mayor agreed, or vice versa. You know, can you imagine the use of that?
I mean, I think honestly, we're getting into the kind of realms of secondary legislation, if I'm honest, because we've got the first part of the legislation through, and that's got royal assent. Secondary legislation is where all of this will get worked through. So,
but that's why I'm asking the question, because as someone who sits in the House of Lords and watches all that secondary legislation be administered horrifically wrong, to be kind, I would like someone to start to think of these questions before it goes wrong, because it will, not after it's gone wrong. And that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, and that's what we're working through.
Okay, so you are active.
I think all I'd say is just, you know, we're coming here and sharing where we're at right now, and we just ask you to appreciate that we're midstream.
Okay.
You know, we're halfway through the legislation. We're building a staff team. You know, we're doing all of this stuff. So we can't go into detail we don't yet have, because we're midstream. But we're very happy to come back.
Okay, so you've answered my question before I asked. I was going to say, would you commit to coming back? Thank you for that commitment.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I'm asking these questions because I'm trying to gently present you with some of the things that I hope you are thinking about, so that they don't become problems in the future, because we've all seen what a problem bad legislation is and the enactment of that. I think, Chair, I think that's it for me.
All right, thank you. I thought at one point we were going to break out into a 1990 quality song by Snap, I've Got the Power. But the...
I know. Don't tempt us.
Yeah, well, we need a proper dance floor as well. In terms of the KPIs that you've referred to earlier, I'm presuming that also includes like growth, you know, GVA as part of that, in terms of Pan London as a result.
Sorry, is this about the evaluation?
Evaluation piece.
That's what we're designing at the moment.
We are.
What
we're
those
designing that
factors will be, what we'll measure, what makes sense to measure, all of that. That's all in train right now.
Yeah. And when you do that, is there, you know, you talked about the New York comparison. Is there a baseline that you can compare that to? You know, it's difficult to attach performance indicators to something that's completely brand new, for example.
That will form part of the independent evaluation. So I'm assuming that any independent evaluation will come in, would look at comparative data, but that's not something that we've actually worked on yet.
Fair enough. Go ahead, go on.
This is a plea, if anything else, to the Deputy Mayor. We have, I think
you want the dance floor.
I think you made...
I'm down with that.
He's got moves.
I'm down with the dance floor. I'll join you on that campaign.
I have a few shapes I can throw if I have to.
He's great at parties.
I think I heard you make the comment that you want to make London a nightlife city, etc., etc. But I'm looking to you now to help the Mayor articulate that, particularly amongst politicians. It's very easy for one or two angry letters for a politician just to say no, because it's much easier than granting planning. And I think London has lost a lot of its pizzazz. I come from a community, almost all of the black communities' sort of fun venues are gone. Night moves, all those things are gone. So if that's going to happen, we are looking to you, Deputy Mayor, to push the idea that London can and should be more 24-hour for all the different reasons, employment, the cultural aspect, the future of our young people, all those things. But I haven't sensed lately that that's happened. Will we see a step change in that activity?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we are really pro nightlife. We want to grow nightlife. We want to boost our reputation. We want to build confidence. You know, we've got a fantastic offer, but we can strengthen it. I think that's the message. And there will be moments throughout this process where we'll be able to champion, go out there, communicate the changes. I think we have to do it really in line with the powers, don't we? It makes more sense to kind of go out rather than doing it randomly, you know. I mean, the work carries on, honestly. I mean, behind the scenes, we've got all the cases sitting with the Culture at Risk team. Marsha's building the evidence base, building the team. Yeah, absolutely. We are down with championing And
Because this
advocating
point
for
needs to be made on the first
Yeah.
panel. That I think, that, excuse me, I forget his name. The guy sat in the middle who builds theatres. He sort of alluded to a fact that there's a lack of confidence in investors. Alan said the same as well. So, what conversations are we having to show people that we're prepared to innovate, and that City Hall, through its new licensing activity, will support that innovation and therefore new investment?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important. We'll be doing all of that.
Okay,
100%.
I'm going to come back to you to see the fruits of that labour. I want to know what exactly you're doing. It's not a question you can answer now, but that's a line of inquiry that I will be pursuing.
Thank you. Great to get cross-party support on this. So we've now reached the end of the session. Would like to thank our guests for attending the meeting and for all of their contributions today. The committee has a few more brief items of business to deal with. In the meantime, guests, you're welcome to leave the room or remain as you so wish. Can I ask the committee to note the report and the discussion that had just taken place?
Noted.
Thank you. Can we also delegate authority to myself as chair in consultation with party group leads to agree any output?
Agreed.
And can I ask the committee to note the current work programme?
Noted.
Date of the next meeting is that 20th of July, 2 p.m. back in the chamber.
Agreed.
Which is a Monday. And any other business? I have no urgent business, which concludes today's meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.